Many people believe that the Great Depression started with the stock market crash of October 29th, 1929, and that was a major cause of the Great Depression. Many Americans were borrowing money to buy stocks, and when the stock market crashed, many Americans owed more money on the stock than it was worth. But that was not the only cause of the Great Depression. While the economy was booming in the 1920s and Americans were buying new technology such as cars and radios, 60% of cars were bought on credit and 80% of radios were bought on credit. Americans were getting loans that they could not pay back, and when they could not pay back their debt, they disappeared, and debts were not paid back. Because of this, many banks began to fail. In 1929, 641 banks failed. In 1930, 1,350 banks failed. And in 1931, 1,700 banks failed. Because of this, people were unable to get money out of the bank, and when they did, they were less likely to spend it. This lowered demand and increased unemployment from 3% in 1929 to 25% in 1933. There was also no government services provided for the unemployed, and many unemployed people still had mortgages to pay, and since they could not pay them, they became homeless. Farmers struggled during the 1920s and 1930s, in addition to the problems that they were already having with high railroad shipping rates and falling crop prices. They had taken in loans to increase production for World War I, and when the war was over, demand decreased and they still had to pay back their loans. Farmers in the West especially struggled because they had a drought, and the drought combined with wind and the uses of steel plows caused the soil to become loose, resulting in the Dust Bowls, where dust was blown in the air, which suffocated livestock. Herbert Hoover was president when the Great Depression started. He had run on the platform of trying to end poverty, so he tried to reverse the Great Depression but was unable to by the 1932 presidential election, where Franklin Delano Roosevelt won the election over Herbert Hoover in a landslide. Herbert Hoover reduced interest rates on loans, created public jobs, and asked the wealthy to donate. He did not believe in federal aid, but when this did not work in 1932, he made federal loans to railroads and large businesses. When banks and businesses refused to make loans or hire workers, he hired construction workers for the Hoover Dam. Franklin Delano Roosevelt won the election of 1932. Franklin Roosevelt served 3 full terms and died 1 month into his 4th term. He passed 15 bills in his first 100 days, which was more than any other president in U.S. history. He had the New Deal, which involved building infrastructure and increasing employment. It formed the Tennessee Valley Authority to bring electricity to Tennessee Valley, where less than 5% of the people had electrical power. He formed the Civilian Conservation Corps, which employed 2 million young men for $5 per month and gave $25 per month to their families. The CCC laid out the Appalachian Trail. He also formed the Rural Electrification Administration, which raised the percentage of farmers with access to electricity from just 10% at the beginning of the Great Depression to 80% by 1950. Roosevelt formed the Federal Emergency Relief Administration and the National Recovery Administration. He passed the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which paid farmers to produce less so that there would not be a surplus and crop prices would increase again. He passed the Social Security Act, which forced savings for retirement. He passed the Wagner Act, which gave workers the right to join unions and collectively bargain. The National Labor Relations Board was formed to enforce the Wagner Act. There was also the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. The Supreme Court overturned some New Deal acts as unconstitutional, and Franklin Roosevelt tried to pass a law that said that all justices must retire by 70, and if they don't, he could add 1 more justice to the Supreme Court. And people accused Franklin Roosevelt of trying to be a king. In 1932, the deficit was $461 million, and in 1936, it was $4.4 billion.